All right. So, um, I figured it would probably be helpful to do a quick video on um, using ForeFlight and X-Plane and how that works and all that kind of stuff. So, oh, sorry. Um, so I'm not going to go into how to stream and share an iPad because that I think is probably pretty easily Googleable. Yeah, but so as far as how to actually set this up and then do a flight so you can kind of see what happens and how to use it all and oh, well that was fun. Um, we're going to do this. So first off, what I think is important to do is show real quick how the connection works. So right now you'll see it's like up in the upper right, I've got I'm connected to my Wi-Fi, um, and IP address is 192.168.0.17. If I go over to uh, network in the settings, you'll see that my enter IP address is at dot dot 17 or whatever. I use the transmit to a single mapping app. I tried the broadcast to all mapping apps, but it didn't seem to work out all that well. But anyway, so that's how you get the information from X-Plane to uh, your iPad. And then when you go to open up ForeFlight, look at that, GPS moved it right to Auction Regional, which is where we're at. And if you go to more in the bottom right corner, and then devices, on the left, you'll see X-Plane is connected. I don't need a Sentry because I built my own. Okay. Um, anyway, so that is all set. So we'll look at the map. Um, so let me get rid of this thing because it's probably all right. So if we look at the map, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Yeah, that'll work for now. I don't know why the, the it shows that, but anyway, what I plan on doing is taking a flight from Auction, which is where we flew yesterday, to uh, uh, to Chandler. Sorry, I realized as I was doing this that I meant to make a copy of it, and I'll send you a link so you can have the auction that I have. I don't know if it needs extra libraries, but um, I guess we'll find out. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't work, that's fine. Let me just compress. Yep, we'll do that. Okay, so um, anyway, yeah, as soon as this is done, I'll put it into a Google Drive and share it with you or something like that. Um, so we're gonna go from auction to Chandler. But first off, this map looks terrible, right? Like it's really kind of difficult to see anything that's going on. In fact, if I take off the aeronautical thing, like that might be what you see originally. I don't know exactly. You probably don't have TFRs. You don't have traffic. You don't have hazard advisory. So this is what you see. I don't even, what is this little dot? I don't even know what this little yellow dot is. Um, anyway, yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and try and go to Chandler. So I'm gonna set that up. Sorry, let me think this just, yeah, okay. Let me add this to a Dropbox folder real quick, or Google Drive folder real quick. I don't know if it's this one. Only because this takes like forever to actually upload. All right, there. Drag that in there. And yeah, it's uploading. Okay, cool. So as soon as that's done, I'll shoot you a link with it. All right, so we're gonna go to Chandler, but first we have to figure out what Chandler is. So one of the things that I think is super helpful to have uh, on this map itself, the left um, top left little drop down box thing lets you choose what to show on the map. So I usually do the aeronautical one for sure. That is just like a more pronounced picture of some things that are important for flying. I also do the VFR sectional. So if I don't have the aeronautical thing on, this VFR sectional is what the map looks like that you can either buy or you can download them for free off the FAA website, but they're really hard to use when they're digital. I like to have the hard copy sectionals. I've got some hanging up in my room and they work really well. But this is what they look like. And when you're training, they usually suggest that you have these also because you'll use them to plot stuff out and things if they don't let you use ForeFlight. Um, but yeah, so we'll turn aeronautical back on. Other things I like to have in there, traffic. So it probably won't matter with this flight, but when you go to fly and you've got like, you can receive traffic and that kind of stuff, it shows up on here. I always do TFRs. TFRs are temporary flight restrictions. So like out here near Canyon and Roosevelt Lake is a TFR. And if you click on it, it'll show you that, this has been going on. Um, and it's because of the fires out there. So they don't want you to fly anywhere within this area between the surface and 10,000 feet mean sea level. So that's just one of the TFRs. There's probably a couple other ones, but that kind of stuff. Then you've got um, other stuff on the map that I won't spend too much time on. I'm still interested in whatever this little green dot is, but it just won't show up. Um, but so you've got like these outlines are airspace maps. So this kind of uh, just pure blue lines that are everywhere and they look crazy right in the center of the screen. This is the Phoenix Class Bravo airspace. So it's the special airspace only for Sky Harbor. The only way you're allowed to go in there is to request clearance from Phoenix Approach, and they give you a very specific clearance, and then they say cleared into the Bravo. And if you zoom in, this aeronautical is super nice because it'll show you on these lines like their like what the level of air or like what the altitude of that airspace is. So like this far south inner ring, we're actually going to go under it, is between 6,000 and 9,000. It keeps kind of zooming away, but between 6,000 and 9,000 um, mean sea level. And then you can see on this right here, this tells you that also. But it just, yeah, it can be helpful. Um, then over here is Chandler airspace or Chandler airport. That blue line and without that aeronautical thing on, it's that dashed line that goes around it, the darker blue. That's Chandler's Class Delta or D Class Delta airspace. Um, that is a lot easier to work in, um, but it's what we're going to be flying into, and you still need to ask permission to fly in there, but they're a lot easier to get in and out of. So you'll notice that this is right here, this box says minus 30. What that means is the Chandler class Delta airspace is from the ground up to but not including 3,000 feet mean sea level. So just add two zeros to the end of all of those numbers and you'll like that's the altitude they're talking about. So this is up to but not including 3,000. The airspace that's right above it that we're going to be flying in, this kind of area here, is part of that Phoenix Class Bravo that's between 6,000 and 9,000 feet. So you've got 3,000 feet difference between the Bravo and the Chandler Delta. So you're usually pretty good if you want to pass through there because you've got from 3,000 to 6,000 feet before you're in anybody else's airspace. And when we actually make the plan and I show you the route profile, you'll see that better. There's places where it gets a little tighter, like here, up in the north side of Chandler's Airport. It's from 4,000 to 9,000 is the airspace. And so when it's 4,000 to 9,000, you're like, you've got 1,000 feet, and that's getting pretty tight. This other little pie over here is 5,000. Oops, sorry, is 5,000 to, or 3,000 to 5,000. So you got 2,000 feet. So it's not quite as tight, but anyway. And then actually, just so you get an idea, we can turn off. We can do the aerial map, maybe. Yeah, there it is. So you'll see, like this, it's almost like Google Maps, right? So this is Chandler Airport that we're going to fly into once it loads. But yeah, turn back on the VFR. See, right there. Turn on aeronautical. Turn the aerial off because I don't really know what happens behind the scene, but I don't feel like dealing with it. Oh, and then one other nice thing is as you zoom in closer, it actually gives you like the runway numbers, the taxi numbers, the hold points, and all that kind of stuff, and you know where you can park and all that. But anyway, and then the last one that I turn on is hazard advisory, and I don't know if they have hazard advisory for uh, the cheaper subscription for ForeFlight. But basically what hazard advisory is when we're moving, I think like probably around 30 knots or so or more, it'll start telling us if we're really close to the ground, if there's mountains in the distance, excuse me, if there's mountains in the distance, are we below or above them, that kind of stuff. And you can actually see, so like if I let me just hide this for a second here. You'll see like right in front of us, well, you can't really see them very well, but there's mountains way out there, right in like this little area out here. So if I turn on synthetic vision, which up at the top, um, and yeah, up at the very top, there's a synthetic vision um, button. There's a light blue colored, um, yeah, light blue colored symbol, I guess. Like the square is like light blue colored. I'll turn it off. That's the little gauges on the bottom. Just to the left of that is the synthetic vision. And the synthetic vision, it's nighttime right now because it's like 8:20 here. So it automatically shows night, but you can see the mountains off in the distance, and they're red. If I make them, uh, if I yeah, maximize the screen, you can see it a little bit better. Um, oh, hey, you just sent me a message too of your ForeFlight. Um, let's see what you did. Oh, it looks like you're fine with it. Yeah, buddy. That's pretty sweet. Um, but yeah, so I'm going to show you though a couple more things that maybe it'll work, maybe won't. We will see. But anyway, so I'm going to turn this off. And let's go ahead and make a flight. So first thing first, we know we want to go from A39, that's Ak-Chin, where we were at yesterday, up to Chandler. So I'm going to type in the search bar on the top right, um, and that'll bring it over to the center, and we'll do A39 to KCHD. And you can type in that. I just have already typed it in. I want to save it. If you don't know what an airport is, there's at the very bottom, there's the tabs. One of them says airport. You can click on that, and like up here, I've typed in Chandler, and you can see. Here, I'll just type it. So let's say Glendale, actually. So Glendale is what we're looking for. Right, second one down is Glendale Municipal, KGEU, Kilo Golf Echo Uniform. So if we wanted to do that, you could add that to the map. So we can go Chandler, and let's just say we go then to KGEU. All right, look at that. We're not going to go that far, but we'll go ahead and play with this for now because it does show one thing. So if I go to the flight plan, button, FPL at the top, you'll see there's our flight plan so far. The bottom left of that little drop down shows you it's 46 nautical miles. They're estimating it's going to take 28 minutes for flight. We're going to have 20 knot headwinds. The winds must be insane right now. And yeah, we're going to use 4.8 gallons of fuel. So that is all based off of the performance of my plane. On the left-hand side of that drop-down, you'll see it says N5282 Whiskey. That's my plane, Piper PA-28 180 Cherokee. I've set up the performance for this plane. So in ForeFlight, like put in all the performance numbers and that kind of stuff. So that's how it knows that. Then it shows it's running at a 55% performance profile, which is what I usually do because that's my best endurance. If I want best power, I do 75, and like see that cut off 3 minutes. I really don't care for 3 minutes, even though it's only a couple more points gallons, or like a little bit more gas that you use. I still enjoy. Oh, is it like, what is it? It's 0.1% or zero point 0.1 gallon, but that's fine. And then I have it sitting at 3,000 feet for our trip. I'm probably going to keep 3,000 feet just for reference because we're going to cut out uh, Goodyear, or I'm sorry, Glendale. But um, but yeah, you'll see like these are it gives you kind of like a specificity as far as like what might be the best altitude to fly at. Um, 2,000 feet is a 19 knot headwind, 20, and then you can also see how long it would take. Like it's 28 or 29 minutes, really, no matter where you go. And it's got a swing of zero point 0.2 gallons of gas, whatever altitude you choose. So it really doesn't matter. Um, Plus, in this setup, we'd be flying through Phoenix airspace, so we'd actually be at the whim of Phoenix. And if you're not sure what that would look like, there is a profile button kind of in the bottom just to the right. You'll see profile. If you click on that tab, this shows you all of the different airspace. So I know this is kind of like a nightmare, um, but we can move this up and this, like, we could do the whole flight at 10,000 feet if we wanted to, and that would be really difficult. Um, but we could try it. Um, I don't know why that, yeah, this is usually, there we go. Okay, so what we're looking at here is, say, like we're flying at 3,400, which we're not, or 3,600. It's just difficult to do it in this thing. Come on now. Anyway, what this is showing is like we take off. Here are kind of where the hills and the mountains are and stuff. You can kind of see the green, and then the different airspaces are the different colors. So like there's Chandler Municipal Airspace, and it says surface to 2,999 feet MSL, or mean sea level. Then from there we would hit um, a TFR around Chase Field because you can't fly over a stadium when people are playing baseball. So you got to be careful of that. This also will take us into this Phoenix class Bravo airspace. Um, and that goes from the surface to 9,000 feet. So that would be like we'd have to get permission to fly through that. We also go through this section, which is also class Bravo, same airspace, but that's 3,000 to 9,000 feet. And then over here is Glendale's class Delta airspace, so we'd have to be careful going into there, making sure that we got permission to land there, or like permission from the tower as we're flying. And then just past that is an alert zone. And I think there was also a restricted. Oh, Luke Air Force Bases, Class Delta also. But anyway, so it helps you kind of visualize like what airspace you might be flying into, so you can plan for that and maybe reroute it. Like what I would maybe do is, and I could just for kicks take this and I drag it back down here. Um, we'll just say we go there, and then if we cut the corners and stick to like right up against the mountain here. And then we keep that kind of out there, and then that kind of skirts the class Bravo. And then if we look at the flight plan, you'll see there is a spot where we might hit a mountain. I can make my corridor a little bit skinnier, and then I don't have to worry about that. Okay, you can play with all that and learn that kind of stuff. But now here we're skirting the class Bravo, so we don't really have to worry about it so much. And then we're just going to be going into Goodyear, which is, we got to just like I don't think we don't actually touch Goodyear, so we just get close to it, but we don't touch it. And then we land it at Glendale. So anyway, um, that's the profile view. I'm gonna remove, 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 and remove because we're just gonna go to Chandler. Um, and then one last thing you can do. Well, there's going to be a couple more things, but one last thing you can do is you can look at routes, and if you needed, you can. These are routes that like follow navigation points. We're just going to fly direct because it's short, but you could basically it'll show you like this little line here that has V16. That's a radio navigation route coming off of the Phoenix, that this here PXR 115.6 is the frequency for it. You could dial it in that frequency and this radial and then fly right towards it, and you have um, a VOR in the plane that you could follow and use that to fly. We're not going to do that. I'm not going to do VORs. There's that training on the X-Plane that'll show you VORs if you really need to, or if you want to learn it. But yeah, we're just going to go to Chandler. Let's check one more time the best altitude to fly at. Um, I'm going to say 3,500 feet. It's a good altitude. It's going to take us 10 minutes. It'd be faster to go lower, but I want to go up and down. Look at the profile. We're up. We're up in the air for just a little bit, and then we're down. So a couple things, some other things, and usually I don't do this much for simming, but I would for flying if it's like a new place. I don't do it a whole lot if it's not a new place, because like flying to Chandler, I wouldn't, because I've just done it so many times. But some things you can do. First off, when you fly into uh, an airport that has a control tower, usually you want to call them when you're about 10 miles out. And ForeFlight just added all these new little features. Just close that and cancel. Okay. So I can click on the little nugget, as they call it up there, and I can do, uh, let's see, where was it? A long track offset button. Um, and I can say 10 miles. I want to insert a point. So this is 10 miles before Chandler. So when I get to that point, I want to call up Chandler. And I also want to have the weather there before I call in, because they like when you have the weather before you start. Um, but then let's say, let's see what so I don't know what the weather is here right now. I could get up in the air and listen to the radio frequency, or I can click on here and it shows me the weather right now. So it was taken at 7:47 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, which is like, 45 minutes ago, but it's still okay. 280 at 12 knots means we're going to probably land on runway 22 as opposed to 04, because we want to land into the wind. Um, and altimeter is 29er, 79er. Clouds are clear. Visibility is 10 statute miles, which means it's basically severe clear. They don't go higher than that. Something that's important later will be the ATIS, but we'll do that in a little bit. The other thing we can do is we go to procedures, and this is landing at Chandler. So you have an arrival, approach, or traffic pattern. Since we're doing visual flight rules, VFR really, we're just going to go ahead and stick with the traffic pattern. That was the thing I did yesterday. You could do other ones, but we're going to stick with traffic pattern. So this helps us out. Also, it tells us what the best winds are. I'm going to take 2-2 left. Usually, you would land on 2-2 right if you were going up there, but 2-2 left is just going to be easier for us because it's closer and we don't have to fly way out there to do it. But 2-2 left, and then you can check and see what all these are. I know that we're going to do a 45, which just means you enter the traffic pattern at a 45 degree on the base or on the downwind. Looking at traffic patterns, or watching that Fly 8 Mike Alpha or something like that site, it'll tell you what all that kind of stuff means. But so you can add that to the route, close, and our route is set up. And I'm going to stick with that. That's mostly what we need to do. There'll be a couple more things we'll check out, but I think that should be enough to get started. So let's go ahead and fire this plane up. Turn the key on, turn the master switch on, get the rotating beacon on, mixture full rich, pump the throttle real quick. I'm going to turn to VFR. Oh, I guess I should probably make this smaller too so you can actually see what's going on. All right. Yeah, that should work. Okay. So we got that. Close this. I don't need this right now. Fuel tank. Make sure that. Come on. There we go. Fuel's on. I would usually call clear prop. Oh, I gotta put my flaps down. I don't know why it starts with the flaps out. Usually call clear prop. Everything. Oh, and fuel pump on. All right. And clear. That worked. Perfect. All right. Let's see. So we've got fuel pressure's good, alts are charging, oil pressure's good, temps are good. Wow, our left tank has so much more fuel than our right. Good thing we're on the left. Okay, so close that. And this is where we would get things like radios and that kind of stuff set up. So I know that 122 or 126.9 is the radio, the weather for this area or for this airport, just because I've been there a lot. But if you look at the iPad, we'll go ahead and hit the GPS, zoom in on it. Click on there, you can see this is the weather right now. It's 300 at 8. It's saying info though is 126.9, so you can see that. Something that's important in here, you'll see that this says it's 8:15 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, which means this is 15 minutes old. 300 at 8, so we'll use runway 22 because that's 80 degrees off, as opposed to runway 4, which would be 100 degrees off. Visibility is 7 miles, so it must be some sort of misting or something. It's clear below 12,000. 29086 is the altimeter, so I'm going to do that right over here. That's what this little dial does, and these numbers right here is what sets it. So we should be at about 1,307 feet, which is about right there. So anyway, 29086, close enough. So we're good there. We'll go ahead and turn our transponder on. Okay. And then one other thing on the iPad, you'll see in orange, it says density altitude 4,184. So that's an important number, and the reason being is that density altitude, yesterday I was talking about altitude being an important factor when considering plane performance, right? Like the air is less dense the higher you get up, which means that the engine doesn't perform quite as well. And so like you have to be aware of that, because if you have a airstrip and it takes you 1,000 feet to get off the ground, and you've got 1,200 feet, that's going to be pretty tight. Like you'd have to be doing it perfectly. But, you know, technically, I guess you should be able to do it. Let's go with 1,500 feet, because 1,500 feet is a lot bigger margin there. So 1,000 feet you need to get off. You have 1,500 feet. Yeah, you can do it. But if that, and that's at sea level. But if you are at sea level, well, let's say you're in the mountains and it's a 1,500 foot runway, and you take 1,000 feet to get off the ground at sea level, you're going to take more than 1,000 feet at, you know, like 6,000 feet altitude. And so 5 or 6,000 feet mean sea level. And so you have to be able to account for that and know that what your performance is. And I'll show you how you know in a second here. But density altitude is basically what you assume is the altitude that the engine's going to perform at. So like right now we're at 1,307 feet MSL, like physically, technically there, but our density altitude is 4,184 feet, and that is because of the factors that go into that is not just your actual altitude, but then also your temperature. I mean, it's 97 degrees, so that's pretty high. Humidity can affect that, and other things. So how you know what your like performance is actually in your POH, or Pilot's Operating Handbook, or Airplane Manual for your actual plane. So I have mine on here in Documents. So this is just part of it. I always forget how to actually like spin this though. I don't think I can. But basically what you see here, and I'll blow this up a tad again, so this is performance documentation. So right now it's 4,000. Oh, I forgot what was it again. 4,184. So let's just say 4,000, even though that's not really at all what it is. The PA-28 160, 2,200 pounds, and PA-28 180, 2,400 pounds ground run. So this is a takeoff distance versus density altitude. This is using 25% flaps, or 25 degrees of flaps, max effort, so the best takeoff you can do with those flaps on a paved runway. 2,400 pounds is gross weight. That's the highest or the heaviest that the plane can fly at. We're not going to fly at that much, but that would be what I would usually run at. Since I'm flying a 140 right now, instead of a 180, I'll go off the other one, but in real life I would do the first one that says PA 28 180. That's the bottom line. The words are upside down, but you get the hint there. So like at 4,000 feet, if we follow this up, um, along the bottom of the screen it says, that's the density altitude. You can see that right there in feet. Follow that line up till you hit that little cross line, and for the PA 28 180, that's 180 horsepower one, it's a little over 1,000 feet, so I would give it like 1,100 feet or so. For the PA 150, which is closer to the 140 that we're flying right now, you're looking at somewhere closer to 1,400 feet. So I would assume 1,400 feet at this. And then I would throw in a little bit of extra, so I'd probably say I need at least 1,700 to 1,800 feet. Even though this is, again, at gross weight, you still want to be safe. And then the lines up here is if there's a 50-foot obstacle above that. Like another example of a chart, let's see, is like, so here's the rate of climb we can expect. So again, we'll go to the PA 28 150, 2150 pound gross weight. That's the dashed line, the small dashed line. We're not going to be that heavy, but this is a good like conservative measure. So at 4,000 feet density altitude, we can expect a climb rate of about 500 and I'd say like 530 feet per minute or so also. And then it just kind of goes down as we get higher and higher. But yeah, so that's where those numbers come from and how they work. So anyway, we'll go ahead and, so we've got the weather already. If I really wanted to, we could listen to this one.
AKChin RGNL weather. Wind 290 at 8.
It's basically telling us the same thing.
Sky clear, temperature 35, dew point 7. Altimeter 2986.
Perfect. All right. So that's all we really needed. So we'll go ahead and, a couple things that are also important to make sure of. Let me set this up real quick. Is right here is your directional thing. You want to make sure that that is squared with the compass. If it's not, you can just hit the D button or push this button in. But D is universal across all planes, and that'll recenter your directional gyro. Anyway, so let's go ahead and let's taxi. So first thing you do when you go to taxi, let it move, make sure the brakes work, which they do, get it moving again, and then we'll start to turn. In real life, I would use checklists. I've got actually some checklists on this iPad here. Come on. This thing does not like to move very much in the game. Should not have to take that much work. Alright, now that we've got our hard turn in. And this is the airport that I'll send you. This is more closer to real life. But anyway, so on the iPad, there's the checklist. Oh, you know what? I totally forgot to... I did all that, and I forgot that I had shown your screen. Hold on, or I had covered the screen. Let me resize this real quick. Try that again. I'm not so good at following all the time. So this here is that directional gyro I was talking about, this thing. And so if you hit, this thing. So if you hit D, D will keep it center on all planes, but you want to make sure that this matches your magnetic compass up here. Anyway, so we'll keep going. And then, so checklists. So you've got the, the checklist here, you'll see like I've got a bunch right in the fourth from the bottom. It's November 5282 Whiskey, John's Cherokee. Click that one. Come on, buddy. Start moving. And this has just got all your checklists. So like there's the pre-flight inspection where you check the whole plane over before you go fly. It's quite a bit of stuff. And then before starting engine. So this is everything you would do before you'd actually start the engine. Then the checklist for starting the engine when cold, and all that stuff. And then taxi and ground check and all that. I'm going to skip a majority of that stuff because we don't necessarily need to do it here. But yeah, zoom this out just a tad. But it was a fun just taxiing around. Getting closer. Myself pull off to the side a bit. Just take this super skinny taxiway. And look, ForeFlight tells you you're approaching the runway and you've entered it. So nice. Alright, I'm going to set my flaps to 25 degrees, which it should show that. Yeah, so the flaps are at 25 because that's what we're going to do for a takeoff. This takeoff, we're going to do a short field takeoff, which is just like a different style of takeoff, but I'm just going to get lined up with the runway. Man, this thing is like a dog. Alright. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and take off, and you'll notice that as we start to move, ForeFlight itself will change a bit. So as we start moving faster, everything will go red, and that'll be the hazard thing, and it'll stay red until we're about 100 feet off the ground, then it'll be yellow, and then when we're 1,000 feet off the ground, it'll go to the normal color that it is right now. And then when we zoom out, I'll show you like mountains and things and how that works. But so we'll go ahead and go full power. Everything's looking good. Off the brakes. Don't allow for the spin. It's 1,000-foot mark right there. Get the nose up. And we're up. Short field takeoff. Alright. Gain some speed. Gain some speed. Start to climb with those.
FSE flight not started.
Oh yeah, it also tells you, ForeFlight will also tell you what the ATIS is for the airport you're going to be at when you start getting near. So we'll get rid of that then. So one notch down, the other notch down, and now the climb out. So we'll zoom out. And then that green line is, like the green circle that's forming around the plane right now, is your glide radius. So if the engine was to die right now, I could land in anything that's inside of there. There's not a whole lot, right? But we're only 600 feet above the ground, or 700 feet above the ground right now, so let's go ahead and make our turn. Let's do a big, long turn. So this isn't usually how you would fly, but I'm just going to do it for now, because it's just easier. And there we go, now we're a bit more out. So let's zoom out a little bit more. Now we'll just fly it. We're at 2,500 feet, so I'm going to keep flying still. I can turn my fuel pump off. I should have had my landing light on, but it's okay. Alright. And we'll just keep climbing, and since we were talking, it was talking about that weather, I think we're still kind of far out. Yeah, we're about 5 minutes from that 10-mile part, but we'll get the weather anyway. So click this little button you can't see anyway.
Chandler Muni Information Oscar. 2100 Zulu weather. Wind 290 at 8. Visibility 7. Sky clear. Temperature 35. Dew point 7. Altimeter 2986. Arriving runways 22 left.
And
22 right. Departing runways 22 left. 22 right. Advise on initial contact, you have Oscar.
So we have Oscar, which I'll explain in a second what that actually means. So I can get this trim set. So I stop climbing. There we go. And just make sure we're on our trail. So, if you look at ForeFlight now, you'll see off here, these are the Sierra Estrellas. So it's showing me right now that like there's mountains there and that they're higher than I am because the red, like it's not safe to fly over. Out here, there's mountains just off to the right that are not as high as I am, partially because I keep climbing, I just realized. So we'll descend a little bit, but yeah, so that's helpful. And then what else is really helpful is that synthetic vision again. So if it was at night, like it is right now, synthetic vision gives you quite a bit. I've flown whole trips with just this synthetic vision. Actually, eventually I'll encourage you to join a virtual airline. It's sounds kind of dorky, but the one that I'm in, they have a bunch of missions in Alaska and that kind of stuff, and you fly planes through like mountain valleys and things. And it's pretty sweet, and it's a great introduction of like actually having missions to fly and things to do to keep you on your toes. But I was flying through some valleys, which were pretty insane. And while I was flying through those valleys, I couldn't see anything. It was all fogged in on the game. But I used synthetic vision to navigate through the valleys, and it was super sweet. So I use it at night also when I'm flying in the plane. I'll throw synthetic vision on just because those mountains can be pretty dark, and I know I should, like, most of the time I know where I'm at. Not most of the time, I always know where I'm at. And I know that I'm not going to hit anything, but there's no point in, like, taking a chance. So, anyway, let's get back in the course a little bit. So, right now, what I would probably end up doing is getting on Chandler's Tower frequency, which is, we're going to be doing arrival from the south and the east. And so I would do 133.1 or 126.7 or 126.1. But I would get those frequencies dialed up because I'm about 10 miles out right now. And then what would usually happen is the radio call would go something to the effect of, wow, I see I always do this way too high. Hey, I gotta get back down to 3,500. But I would do a radio call like, so I would say Chandler Tower, Cherokee 5282 Whiskey. And that would be like a cold call to the tower if they were super busy and I just wanted to get my name in there so they were ready to start talking to me and they were ready to listen and all that stuff. And then they would come back and say, Cherokee 5282 Whiskey, Chandler Tower, go ahead. And I would respond with, Cherokee 5282 Whiskey is 10 miles to the south at 3,500 inbound for full stop with Oscar. And Oscar was the weather that we talked about. And so Chandler Tower would either say, all right, like they would give me further instructions, or they might say ident or put a squawk code in. That's this transponder that you can't see. Hold on. This transponder right here. And so what you can do is if they give you a number like 2443, you would put that in there, or they might say ident. There's a button right here called ID or ident. Just hit that, and that makes it flash on their radar. Let me turn back on ForeFlight. So, yeah, so basically, that's how that part works. And then if they saw you, once they saw you on radar, they would say, or like if they asked me to ident, I would say 5282 whiskey ident and like push that button. And then once they saw me, they'd say, radar 5282 whiskey radar contact, enter a left downwind runway 22 left. And then I would respond with left downwind runway 22 left, Cherokee 5282 whiskey. And so now I'm cleared to go into their airspace, and I'm cleared to go into, or I'll join the traffic pattern. So I'm going to start my descent. I don't really need to. If you look at the bottom right of the ForeFlight screen, you'll see descent to dest 450 feet per minute. That means I'd have to descend at 450 feet per minute to get my descent right. But like, I've been really flying terrible on this leg, so I'm just gonna start my descent. And I think I can see it out there. Yeah, there's the airport right there we're gonna land at. So. And you'll see, once you get that ortho I was talking about, so Maricopa's over there. We're about to fly into Sun Lakes. There's I-10, I think. No, I-10's behind us. Where's I-10? I-10's... Oh, I think that might be I-10 right there. But anyway, yeah, so this is working nice for us right now. So we're turning a little bit because I'm heavy on that left wing. I'm heavy on that left wing because I have more fuel in that wing. You'll see right here, I've got 15 gallons in the left and 10 in the right. So it models that like my left wing over here, there's the fuel cap, is heavier right now. So it's making that wing go down when I'm not paying attention. One of the things I forgot to show you is like what altitude I want to be at when I come into the pattern. So usually you're 1,000 feet above the ground. So if I click on Chandler in the iPad on ForeFlight, I can click on info, and at the top it'll say Chandler Municipal, Chandler, Arizona, United States, 1,243 MSL. That's the elevation, and then right below that is 2,200 feet MSL pattern. So I want to get down to 2,200 feet by the time I get on that downwind. So right now I'm at 2,400 feet. I didn't have to change the altimeter because the altimeter was the same at Chandler as it was in Maricopa, so we should be fine there. But now you'll start seeing like the land around me is getting red or yellow, and that's because I'm below all that stuff. So I'm within 1,000 feet of the ground right now out here. But that's okay, we're good. So we'll go ahead and enter a pattern, and then usually what would happen is I would report being in the pattern here to Chandler Tower. So I'd be like, we'll go ahead and make our turn onto the left downwind for runway 22 left. And I would say Chandler Tower, Cherokee 5282 whiskey on left downwind runway 22 left. And they would come back and say, either if there's someone in front of me, they would say Cherokee 5282 whiskey. There's a Cessna turning base, follow Cessna in your number 2 to land, or they might say you're just cleared to land, and so they'll give me a clearance to land. So I'll get like a Chandler Tower, or I'll get a Cherokee 5282 whiskey, clear to land runway 22 left. And then I would respond with clear to land 22 left, 5282 whiskey. So I'm about a beam probably right now. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and lower a notch of flaps, start descending a bit, and then we'll get our turn in just a few more seconds. It's a lot easier, like I said, in the real life plane. But so pre-landing checklist, fuel tank is correct, fuel pump on. Go ahead and do carb heat out, mixer's full ridge, 1 notch of flaps, and throttle set. And let's make our turn. So, and as we turn, we'll put in another notch of flaps. And this is our base turn. That. And airport's right over there. So we're still descending, I'm actually pretty high right now, but that's okay. And then we'll turn our final turn and put in our last notch of flaps. I'm actually not fully convinced that I want to use all these flaps because that air was kind of windy. Oh, and ForeFlight showed us we're 500 feet above ground level, which is about what you want as you turn final. So, oh, I turned a little tight. See, it's a lot easier when you're in the real plane and you got a better reference on that. And I should have paid more attention to ForeFlight there, but. And then the lights that are off to the side, those are VASI, or I'm sorry, those are PAPI lights. PAPI and VASI are the same. All white means you're high, too high. All red means you're too low. But if it's half red and half white, that means you're right on the glide slope. We're flying visual, so it doesn't really matter as much. But if you were flying in instruments, you'd kind of want to follow that. Yeah, that wind is powerful coming from that side. So there's going to be a crosswind landing. We're holding it. I'm going to dip that wing and turn the nose to try and line us up. So this will probably not be a great landing, but we'll see. So we're there, we'll level off. Oh, bubbled pretty terribly. Oh man, that wind is strong right now. Come on. There we go. Come on. All right, and we're down. You'll notice as soon as we got down, it went into taxi mode on the iPad. So it shows us like we'll take a right at November here. So we would take a right to get off the runway. I cleaned it up. And then as we get off the runway, wow, this thing slows. Tower would probably tell us to contact ground. And turn off our fuel pump and all that kind of stuff. So tower would tell us to contact ground, and then ground would tell us, after we'd contact them, we'd be like, Chandler ground, Cherokee 522 Whiskey, clear runway 22 left at November, taxi to the terminal. And then they would give us taxi instructions like Cherokee 522 Whiskey, taxi to the terminal via November, cross runway 22 right, then November and Alpha to the terminal, and then we would just follow that. But I'm not going to go through all the taxiing because that's a lot of work. And it looks like you just made it to Prescott, so that's pretty awesome on yours. But so I'm gonna do park and brake and kill the engine. So one last thing I wanted to, oh, I might, okay, there it is. One last thing I wanted to show you then is like ForeFlight, what ForeFlight will do with this. So this whole time, if you look at the bottom right, or I'm sorry, it's about bottom middle left side, there's an REC, like record, and then a time. That's been recording our flight. So if I stop that, what I then can do is in the very bottom right, let me actually make this bigger again because we don't need this anymore. There we go. So then what we can do from there is you click on more in the bottom right corner, and you'll see there's logbook. So you click on logbook. What I would definitely suggest is that you delete these because like I've got my logbook of all my different flights and that kind of stuff of actual flying that get counted, but it'll also keep your X-Plane one, and you can't actually log X-Plane for real flight hours, at least not this X-Plane. But I mean, it's good practice, but you can't get like real flight hours for it. So usually if you just like think you can just maybe swipe, oh no, I guess you have to go in and then press delete. But you'll see this is our whole our flight here, and it'll show you like, you know, you can put in a bunch of different information here or whatever. But you can also click on this map and it will show you your actual flight log. And brand new now is this like kind of flight profile thing. So it'll go and um, you can see like as you're flying, what it looks like. Eventually, I'll actually start to take off. Um, there was a lot of setup that it was recording for us. So there's where we go to take off, the flight path that we take, and all that kind of stuff. While it's doing that, we can look at our pitch. So this is where we're climbing and descending, our bank and stuff, and all that kind of stuff, and altitude back again. Um, But yeah, so that's kind of cool. And then what you can also do up at the top, there's this info where it gives you some kind of information and metrics and stuff like that. But you can do this send to, and then click open KMLN. And if you have Google Earth, you can check out Google Earth, and it will open your. I've got a couple in here. Let me get rid of the last or the ones that are on here that we don't need. So here's our flight path on Google Earth, exactly where we flew. And even cooler, you can do a 3D image and see like your altitude changes. So here's like where we went to take off, um, and then altitude as we climbed and flew and flew and flew and flew, and then we started to descend and we came in and we spun around and then we came in and landed. So it's not perfect on here. It's actually a lot better on in real life, but yeah. So you can go to that and then hit back, and then what I usually do for these is I just delete them because I can't keep those logs. But anywho, that is a quick rundown of flying with ForeFlight using a bunch of the different stuff you can do. There's so much more that's in here that ForeFlight will do. You can do clearances and build routes and let it build you instrument routes and all that kind of stuff. But um, yeah, it's really awesome, and it applies pretty closely to what you do in real life. So anyway, hopefully that helps. If you have questions or something like that, let me know, and I can definitely help you out. But yeah, enjoy.